Hey everybody, and welcome back to yet another retro game and toy hunt. And this time we've got two conventions for the price of one, mainly because we don't generally do these kinds of conventions, and so there's not really that much to cover. But I think they're neat, and really that's all that matters. First up is the Squared Circle Expo in Indianapolis. And if you haven't already noticed, this is actually a wrestling convention. Now, I'm not the biggest wrestling convention person. I do enjoy wrestling, I watch it. But as far as conventions go, there's really not much there for me. I do enjoy seeing like the older wrestlers and stuff like that. But as far as things to buy and merch, which is generally what I go to conventions for, there's just not much there for me because I don't collect it. But my brother is quite the collector of various WWE toy lines, and he was on the hunt for several figures that he just couldn't find in retail anymore, either because they're out of date or because resellers have already snatched them up and are selling them on these tables for ridiculous prices. And while I do realize that whenever you go to these conventions, you are going to be paying a premium for anything that you buy, I wasn't prepared for the premium that a wrestling convention throws out for its merch. It is insane how overpriced a lot of these are, and I'm sure they're collectible, but man, I was definitely out of my element here. Especially seeing a lot of these figures that you could literally walk down to Walmart and buy if you were lucky enough to have some stock come in at the time for $25, and they're here for like 80 or more. It's insane. So yeah, most of this convention was basically just wandering behind my brother and his stepbrother and just kind of taking it all in and knowing that I wasn't about to spend any money on a lot of this stuff because I would need to mortgage like half my house or something like that just to buy a collection of these. Also, one thing that really didn't help this convention at all was that the event was being held in a very, very small venue. This is in a hotel. It's not an actual convention center or anything like that, but it basically had just one room where like the merch was, and then it kind of had another room off to the side where some of the wrestlers were, where you could just chill and take some pictures with them. But it was tiny. This is one of the tiniest venues I have ever been to with an event like this in it, and it was jam-packed. Like the video probably isn't getting this across, but it was shoulder to shoulder to the point where I was having a hard time even getting video of a lot of stuff. And the stuff that I did get video of was basically just me fighting my way through a crowd and doing my best to get what I could as I was being pushed along. But as crowded as it was still a really neat little convention to go see, you know, just for the spectacle of it all. One thing that I loved was that because it was so small, you get scenes like this where Jimmy Hart is just out chilling with the other people, or Kane is over here, you know, you can just pose with them. They're kind of just out and about, unlike a lot of the larger conventions where they're all like in a little separate part of the convention. You can't get to them unless you stand in like a 15-minute long line. Like, that was neat, so I definitely appreciated that. But yeah, overall, this was a fun little convention, and I definitely recommend it if you are into wrestling at all, especially if you don't mind spending a lot of money for it. And next up is something completely different. This is the Indy Classic Expo, which is essentially just a few rooms filled with really old computers, like back in the 80s, early 90s kind of stuff. And this was incredibly cool. Now, as far as things to buy or whatever, there wasn't too much here, but just the amount of history that was on display at this place was incredible. Now, I grew up in the 80s, and computers back then was a luxury, to put it lightly. Like, I never saw anyone with a computer until maybe the early 90s. Actually, that's a lie. My neighbor back in the 80s, I remember one time I went over, and he had Red Baron on the computer that he had, and I was fascinated by it. It was so cool. But that was about it. You know, even in school growing up, I didn't have access to computers until the mid-90s or so. And you know, that kind of sucked. I missed out on a huge chunk of history that was just kind of lost to me. I had zero access to it. So coming to this and seeing all of this amazing history and all of these computers I've never seen was just really something. Like, I genuinely enjoyed this. Unfortunately, though, because I just didn't have access to these computers as a kid, I don't know what half of these things are. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of you that might be watching this and you're just like, oh my God, you know, that's the computer I had. I mean, if you had this computer right here, wow, you're my hero. This thing was a chonk. I mean, just look at this thing. But yeah, I don't know a lot of these things. Of course, I recognize things like ColecoVision and all that stuff. You know, they had some Apple computers here, and that's really about it. You know, and some of the old Ataris. But you see a lot of these, and they just kind of look like they came from like a sideshow. And I love stuff like that. I love that old 80s aesthetic. Now, they did have some video games here on display that you could check out, like the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation, and some other things that you could check out, like these tubs of computer games. That's essentially as far as it goes, as far as like things you can buy at this place. Like, this really wasn't here for like your typical convention. It was more kind of like buyers and sellers coming together and trading almost. Like they wanted to show off what they got, but they're also looking for other people, you know, that actually collect these old computers and see what they got and see if it kind of fits in with their collection. So a lot of trading and wheeling and dealing going on at these booths. I just tried to stay out of people's way and get some footage. Thankfully, this was nowhere near as crowded as the wrestling convention, so it was fun to wander around in here. Some fun people to talk to, and just hang out and see what they got. And they were all really excited to tell you about what they got. I was really impressed with just the amount of people that were wanting to tell you about the history. Like, for someone like me that didn't know anything about a lot of this stuff, they would educate you. They were super into wanting to tell you how this refrigerator-sized computer with Donkey Kong on the screen in one color changed the world, and I can totally appreciate that. They did have a selection of NES games here that you could check out. I didn't really see anything too exciting. Just kind of having my brother here go through them and see if there was anything, but not really, just kind of your standard stuff. But these Mad Magazine board games and Spy vs. Spy, oh my God, like that's the closest thing I got to buying anything. And of course, if you're super cool like I am, you can get all the Java magazines you could ever want at this place. Yeah, it's incredible, just incredible. I did think this was really cool. This is another one of the few things you could buy. These are custom plates that you could buy and put on these little stands. These are all computer printed, of course, 3D printed, and you can see what they do. You can switch them in and out, and they're all lit up and everything. But that's really about it for this place. I thought it was awesome. There wasn't much to see. It was only like 3 rooms, but it was really cool. And if you think this is something you'd be into, then please check this out when April rolls around again next year. But that's going to do it for this time. I thought these were fun little conventions to check out, and I wanted you guys to see them too. So let me know what you think. Again, it's a little bit different than what we usually do, but hey, you know, variety is the spice of life. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll be back next time with yet another retro game and toy hunt.